stamp, so to speak.
Well, I was, yeah, right. Okay, so then where to go? Well, as it turned out, they found somebody who was looking for some help, and then my dad started working for him and actually got paid. But it wasn't in the same place as they found the home for us, and the home. But that my dad had taken that job before the home was found, and the person on the home was a farmer. Well, it's not actually not a farmer. At least he lived in Madison, and he wanted somebody to farm the land for him, as an employee.
Right.
So then. After that year, my dad went to work for him, and so we could live together again. And this was a much nicer house that actually stayed relatively warm. It wasn't a very big house. It was a prairie house that was probably there from the first time that people had settled there. But it was nice and could be kept clean, and there was a kitchen and a dining room and a bedroom downstairs and 2 small bedrooms upstairs, and so it was really well.
Yeah.
And the school was it was about close to a mile to get to the school because we had a very long driveway. In the earlier house where we had been, in order for my sister and myself to get to school, it required that we walk across, I would guess, close to a mile, where there was a neighbor who would, when we had to be there in time for us to get into her car to take us to school. Otherwise, we would have had to walk around 3 miles to school. But it all worked out that way. Well, now that I'm on school, I can say that by this time my English was pretty good. But when the first day of school, when I started country school, the teacher put me in just talked to me a little bit and put me in 2nd grade, which was, but everything else was in 2nd grade too. So when it came to math and all of those things, it was baby stuff. So very quickly she adjusted things so I would be in the 4th grade. And my sister, and I think 4th grade might have been the normal time. And my sister, however, she did not move up as far as she perhaps should have. So my sister was a year behind, and she really didn't like that at all. And I do want to say that other than learning English and learning American history, there wasn't a whole lot that I learned in either that particular school or the other one that we moved to. The math and there were no languages taught. Whereas Ina by that time was fluent in English and was, of course, she had Latvian, and then she also had German that was pretty good. I very quickly forgot my German. And, it was really, there was no homework other than us making sure that the German was correct. So when we got to this other place, school was so easy. And then the farmer allowed my dad to buy some cows and to use the barn that was there, and which was good because then we had milk, and mother made cheese and all kinds of things. And over a period of time, I can't tell you exactly how, but I think we had about 10 cows, and I was the chief person to take care of the cows. And that was fine with me because I didn't like housework. But it did require me to get up early in the morning because I had to do that kind of work and then still have enough time to change clothes because I didn't want to smell like the barn.
Right.
And run down the driveway in order to the school bus would then pick us up to go to school. Fortunately, we were the last stop before in this small town before going there, so we didn't have to be on the bus at 6 o'clock in the morning. We could be there very quickly, and high school was just ordinary, and I liked the outdoor work. My dad definitely needed, Mr. Borby became very ill, and then he died. And then my dad had already begun to do some things for our family there, and he was able to use the tools before Mr. Borby had died on some of the fields that Mr. Borby had not, that were prairie fields and had never been used. He allowed him to do that. But then the widow wished to sell the property, and my dad wanted to buy it, even though we had very little money, but Dad figured that he could make it work and the farm would pay for itself. Well, the attorney, who was Mrs. Borby's attorney, did not want to take the chance that we could pay for it, and so consequently my dad had to take his brother and his a good friend who was also Latvian, my uncle had come in, and this other friend, and they had to come in on that, and so then it was owned by the three of them.
Right.
And as it turned out, actually the farm, except for 1 year, very nicely paid for itself. So my uncle and this other man got a nice share, but they invested in the farm. They, invested in the sense of some other things that Dad thought would be good and needed to be done, and so on. So that went extremely well. School was good, and then I went to high school, which also was not difficult. And it's in high school that my sister, when she had to go through the freshman year, and then the sophomore year, she went to the superintendent, and the superintendent was a superintendent of 100 students, and the grade school as well, which was down below. And she said, and she was all A's in school, and so she said, may I take 2 classes in 1 year? Or even take them in 2 years, because I want to graduate with my class. And it was nicely done. He allowed it to her to do that. And so she started her sophomore year in being also in juniors.
Okay.
And there were my sister always giggled a little bit because there was a young student there. She said, I'm opposed to that. I don't want to graduate with us, somebody else. And said, I do not want to do that at all. I almost don't want to graduate. Well, it turned out that she didn't graduate with my sister because she became pregnant. And so she came back, and she was not allowed to be, and she was really a very nice person. But you know how sometimes we can be uppity. But she came back after the baby was born and graduated with my class.
Oh.
So all was well. And there were lots of things that took place during that time, but nothing really particular.
Well, do you want to talk a little bit about how that story that you just shared really influenced you, after you met Joe, after you started your own family? I mean, even going back to and getting your degree in college and teaching degree.
Well, there was no doubt that we were going to college. I mean, my mother and father were absolutely sure we were going to. And so my sister started in college at South Dakota State, and she knew she wanted to be a nurse. And she was wonderful at it. My mother did not have a Latvian high school education because her father had lost his, or her father and mother had lost two of their children to who left home, and they disappeared. Um, uh, it was World War II. The one was a soldier, probably so he died someplace. Nobody knows where, and the uh, the the daughter fell in love with a Russian soldier as they were retreating because the you know the war was the way it was, and so she never saw either her son or her daughter, and she was not going to lose her daughter and her son, so neither one of them was allowed to go to Latvian high school or university uh, when they were in Latvia, because they didn't want them. They wanted them to stay on the farm.
Gotcha.
Okay, so, but my mother and dad were both absolutely sure that we were going to go to college. There was just no doubt about it. And so my sister took nursing, did extremely well, and went on in different kinds of nursing, and she died, unfortunately, from an aneurysm. And but at the time she died, she was, I believe, head nurse at Fairview Southdale Hospital. By that time, I also had a little brother, uh, um, but then I went to college, and I wasn't nearly as brilliant a student. I enjoyed and things more than she did, and I lived in the dormitory. My sister had lived with a Latvian family who was in Brookings, and didn't have quite the social life that I did, and so I did fine. But my mother wanted me to be a pharmacist. Well, I had no background for that. She didn't know what all you had to learn before that. So I had not had any chemistry, really, to speak of in that small school, and there was no way I was going to make that. So after my second year, and my first year grades were excellent. My second year grades, when some of the more demanding material came in, I couldn't. I mean, I didn't fail anything, but I knew I couldn't go any further. So then I decided what to do then, because I still had to graduate in 2 years. So what did I do? I went for history, and golly, I knew a lot about history, and so I graduated with history. But and then I had a very good friend, and we were going to go to Europe to go to for the summer before we started working, because we'd been so overworked by 4 years of college. I think one can hear that now too occasionally. And so I thought, well, I persuaded my folks that I should go with my friend. And so we got the tickets and everything ready. And they were somewhat skeptical, but there were a lot of Latvians still that we had known in Europe that I could go and see. And other Latvians that were in South Dakota said, go visit so-and-so and so-and-so. And so I was looking forward to that. And then my friend called and said, as it turned out, she could not go with me because her mother had never been anywhere in her life. I think she had a father who was very not a good man. And so before she started her job, she was going to she felt she needed to take her mother to see her sister and family in Washington State. Oh. So I thought, well, I'll go by myself. And I did, and I had a marvelous experience. I went to Scotland, where there was a family there. I went to other places. There were some Latvian families, and of course I went to see Joe. We had been dating for some time, and I think I spent the longest time with him. And I lived on the
on the base, or?
On the base, you know, with some families there, you know, who were happy to have, because, and they all decided that we ought to get married. And in fact, the night before I was to leave, and I had my tickets and everything ready, I there was this big to do at the officers club, and Joe was in charge of the officers club, but he did not, he had spent the money that he was supposed to buy for the special clothing that for officers would have to wear. He had spent that on other things, like taking me around Europe when we did travel together for a while there. So he took me a little bit in the back. He said, "Everybody's been telling me I'm an idiot to let you go home." He said, and so he got down on his knee and he said, "Will you marry me?" And I thought about it, but not very long. And I said, "Yes." So, so, so then the next morning, I called the airport and said I wouldn't be there, but the plane had, of course, already left. No, the plane hadn't left, but, you know, it was really too late. So that when I did get there to the town from which I flew out, they would only give me 2/3 of my ticket because of that, which was a real disappointment because we were planning on that. And then, you know, in the evening after we had decided that, but anyway, it's, so then my life started in another way.
Okay. Well, what do you think?